Greetings again everyone, and it's exciting times for anyone with an aps-c mirrorless camera. Not only have Sigma launched a long-awaited mirrorless update to their legendary 18-35mm f1.8 lens, but they've also hit us with a new little ultra-wide angle aps-c lens with a very bright maximum aperture, their new 12mm f1.4 DC-C. It's the brightest aperture 12mm lens ever put to market. It'll be available for Sony E-mount, Fujifilm X-mount and Canon RF mount cameras, although as I mentioned already, it's an aps-c camera lens, not full frame. Here's the coverage you will get on a full frame image sensor. As you can see, we are definitely getting a cropped image circle here, so this lens really is only for aps-c cameras. If you're on a full frame, you'll definitely need to shoot in your camera's lower resolution cropped mode here. Its price of £519 here in the UK seems pretty reasonable considering the lens you're getting here, even if it's only an aps-c optic. Its price in the USA will be $629. I'd like to thank Sigma UK for loaning me one of these lenses for a couple of weeks for evaluation, although as usual this is a totally independent review, no matter how excited about this thing I might happen to be. I love wide-angle lenses with bright apertures, so this has the potential to be the optic of my personal dreams. 12mm on aps-c is the full frame equivalent of about 18mm, so that's an ultra-wide angle, but without being so wide that it's just plain difficult to compose your images. Still, that extra wideness adds some real drama to your pictures and can be extra useful for shooting indoors, shooting architecture, or for landscape photography. And f1.4 is an amazingly bright aperture for such a lens. The amount of light that brings in is fantastic for indoor and nighttime photography, and particularly useful for astrophotography as well. In fact, this could be a bit of a dream lens for astrophotographers. Not only that, but more artistically minded photographers can get up close and personal to their subjects, shoot at f1.4, and get ultra-wide angle pictures with out-of-focus backgrounds, which always look especially cool. The lens actually has a nice close minimum focus distance here, so a bit of creative photography is easily achievable. Not only that, but this lens could be useful for vlogging too. Here is some vlogging footage for you. Even with the camera's active image stabilization turned on, which crops into the image a bit, we're getting perfect footage for vlogging, with a nicely out-of-focus background at f1.4. And of course, if you want more clarity in those backgrounds, you always have the choice to stop down the lens's aperture. So, this could be one incredibly useful, not to mention quite fun, little lens. As you can see here, the lens is actually quite small, and at only 225 grams or half a pound, it's surprisingly lightweight. It's mostly made of plastic, although it feels solid enough, being built to quite tight tolerances. It's advertised as being dust and splash resistant, and there is indeed a weather sealing gasket around the metallic rear mount. The lens comes with an aperture ring, which is always nice to see. It turns with clicks at every third of an f-stop. Unfortunately though, there is no option to make it turn smoothly or to lock it in or out of the camera controlled A mode. On the Canon RF version of the lens, this will be a smoothly turning control ring instead, customizable to different functions in your camera. Then comes a rubberized manual focus ring, which turns extremely smoothly, and it works very responsively with the lens's focus motor. As you can see here, the lens suffers from a bit of focus breathing, zooming out a little as you focus more closely to your subject. The lens's autofocus motor is quite something though. It focuses silently and accurately, and whether you're in single-shot autofocus mode or in continuous autofocus, it's lightning fast too. Nice. The lens's front filter size is 62mm, and it also comes with a little plastic lens hood with a rubber trim to its bottom edge. As I already mentioned, it does not have its own image stabilization, but honestly, at this price point, you can't have it all, and on an ultra-wide angle lens, it's not that important. Overall, great build quality here. The lens does everything you need without ever getting in your way, and its autofocus motor is especially quick and impressive. Alright, let's take a look at image quality then. I'll be testing it today on a Sony a7CR camera in its 26 megapixel aps-c crop mode. In-camera corrections are turned on for this test. At f1.4, the lens is fantastically sharp in the middle with very good contrast. Stop down to f2 and there's a tiny improvement which leads us to razor sharpness and excellent contrast in the middle. Anyway, let's open back up to f1.4 and take a look in those image corners. Nice, they're looking fantastically sharp too, although obviously rather dark from vignetting. And just like in the middle, stop down to f2 and we're treated to essentially razor sharpness from corner to corner, as well as a bit more brightness in those corners. The lens stays this sharp down to about f8, where the effects of diffraction are beginning to soften the image, and at f11 and f16 things obviously get even softer. Still, what a great performance! Excellent at f1.4 and perfect from f2. You can't really ask for much more than that, to be honest. Okay, let's turn off in-camera corrections and take a look at distortion and vignetting. Here we can see that, behind the scenes, the lens suffers from strong barrel distortion and very strong vignetting at f1.4. Stop down to f2, f2.8 and f4 to see those corners brighten up. I'm quite close to my test chart here, so let's focus the lens to infinity. Here we can see that the barrel distortion isn't quite so bad at normal distances, but it's certainly still there, so you will definitely want to keep in-camera corrections turned on and to make sure your raw images are getting corrected as well. A really cool feature of this lens is that it can focus remarkably closely to your subject, down to only about 17 centimeters, and on an ultra-wide angle optic that is fun. At f1.4, close-up image quality is a bit softer than before, with some colour fringing, but still, the image is holding itself together. Stop down to f2 for more sharpness and contrast, but it's at f2.8 that close-up image quality becomes perfectly sharp, with reduced colour fringing. Let's see how the lens performs against bright light. It's not a bad performance. We are seeing a few ghostly flares and rings here and there, but even in this stress test, they're actually very translucent and don't really show up in normal conditions. While we're working in the dark, let's take a look for coma and sun stars. Over in the corners, we are seeing some mild smearing on larger points of light at f1.4, which is reduced at f2 and at f2.8 goes away. However, interestingly, when doing astrophotography, the tiny stars we see in image corners don't seem to provoke any problems, even at f1.4. So, for astrophotography on a 26 megapixel aps-c camera anyway, this lens is a star. Excuse the pun. Well, let's take a look for sun stars. They're beginning to emerge at f5.6, stop down to f8, f11 or f16 for them to get gradually stronger until they're really quite big. Nice. Next, bokeh. At f1.4, you can get some pretty out of focus backgrounds here, even at such a wide angle, leading to some nicely attention-grabbing pictures. Mostly, those backgrounds look lovely and soft, which is not something to be taken for granted on such a wide-angle optic. Particularly bright specular highlights do suffer from just a tiny bit of blue outlining though, if you're looking very carefully, which leads us neatly on to longitudinal chromatic aberration. At f1.4 it's pretty strong on this lens, although again I should mention that what you're seeing here is rather a stress test. It's still there at f2 and f2.8. At f4 it's going away though, and at f5.6 it's gone. Overall, well, I didn't think anything could get much more exciting than Sigma's new 17 to 40mm f1.8 zoom lens, but actually, to be honest, I had even more fun testing this lens. It's actually a truly awesome piece of kit, incredibly useful. It works perfectly, it's so sharp, and that super bright maximum aperture is just a blast to play around with. It's small and lightweight as well, and not too expensive. It's not completely perfect, of course, suffering from a small amount of coma, some barrel distortion behind the scenes, and some longitudinal chromatic aberration. Nevertheless, though, it easily has to be my favourite new lens of this year, I think, certainly on aps-c, so of course it comes highly recommended. Thanks for watching everyone, and a special thanks to all my Patreon supporters and channel members who help to keep these reviews coming sponsorship free. Check it out in the description below. Supporters also get access to all kinds of exclusive bonus content and early access to reviews. Ciao!